Oh, yeah, morning. Well, there's some music for you. Morning Drive, News Talk 105.9 WEJ. Hi, my name is Frank Barnes, your ever lovable, ever huggable host on this, the number one news talk program basically anywhere. Real quick, wanted to let you know the weather forecast, 55 degrees today, 33 overnight. A high tomorrow of 60, no chance of rain, but 39 degrees. I know you're saying, hey, Frank, that's great for South Georgia, Valdosta, but what's it like elsewhere? Fortuitously enough, we've got someone from out of town on the horn right now. Sam Oleans, Attorney General for the state of Georgia, joins us via the phone line. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Your nickname's now Huggable?
Lovable and huggable. Yeah, absolutely. What's yours?
I'm not going there, Frank. Sorry.
How you doing, my friend?
Doing great. Yes, it's 28 degrees in Atlanta. Not fun.
Wouldn't you like to? Is there any chance you could just relocate offices down here? We're a lot more warmer and we're twice as much fun and the traffic is way better.
Yeah, if you could just bring the capital at the same time, I'd be happy to make that work.
All right, we appreciate you checking in with us more. I know you got a busy agenda. Let's get right to it. We're looking for an update very quickly on Obamacare. Last I checked, more than half the states, 20, are still suing the federal government or at least the White House or somebody from implementing this nonsense. Are we in a holding pattern or is there movement behind the scenes that we're just not seeing?
We've got 3 days of oral argument, 5.5 hours, March 26th to March 28th in the U.S. Supreme Court. I'll be there. We will get a decision by the end of June. So what you've got now is the time where all the lawyers are finalizing their briefs. Some of them have already been filed with the Supreme Court, and we're anxiously looking forward to the oral argument that starts March 26th.
Now this is 3 days worth. This seems a little bit longer than the norm, just from the casual layman's point of view. Did you expect that the Supreme Court would give it this much attention?
Well, this is history. There hasn't been this much time given to a case since about 1972 when you were talking about the civil rights legislation. They've done it over 3 days. The main one that you're interested in is, frankly, day 2. That's the individual mandate. So it is very much history. Per standard operating procedure, the Supreme Court gives 1 hour per case, not 5.5 hours per case.
Wow. Now, can you sort of take me through this? I mean, is there a game plan as to how many? Because if you got 26 attorneys general plus outside counsel, and then I guess Eric Holder in the Department of Justice or attorney, or who talks first, and is there a schedule so far that's lined up?
Well, the first day is the Anti-Injunction Act, which is an issue that, frankly, the Justice Department and us are on the same page. That issue is whether or not the lawsuit's premature or whether or not it is a viable lawsuit now, and both the Justice Department and the state and NFIB say it's fine. So that's the shortest argument. That's the first day. And that, frankly, includes many lawyers that are apart from the norm. The second day is the individual mandate. The third day is severability and expansion of Medicaid. The 26 states are having their cases argued by a great gentleman, Paul Clement, who's a former Solicitor General for Bush 43, a great conservative oral advocate. And then the Solicitor General of the Department of Justice will be doing the argument for the country.
As we're looking at this breaking down, one of the discussion points has been if any of the Supreme Court justices, either potentially yes or potentially no, would recuse themselves. Do you see that happening in a case of this significance?
No. I mean, the liberals want Thomas to recuse himself. The conservatives want Kagan. That is not going to happen. Unlike a state Supreme Court where if a justice needs to recuse himself or herself, there's an appointment process. There is no appointment process for the U.S. Supreme Court, so if a justice were to recuse himself or herself, you just go with less number justices. So accordingly, there are very few times where justices recuse themselves. It has to really be an overt recusal situation. So this is all about counting to 5, and the party with 5 votes wins.
And that's pretty much, and I know people already speculating, okay, if we get a Thomas, yes, Scalia, and this one might get a Kagan and a Sotomayor and all that. So I know people already hedging their bets saying these might go one way or the other, but from the outside looking in, and again, you might have more inside knowledge of this, obviously, but is this going to be a close vote? If you're to be a betting person on this, without getting the individual personalities named, do you see this as being potentially a 5-4 decision?
Yes, most of the pundits would say that Justice Kennedy has the deciding vote.
Wow. When do you get to be a Supreme Court justice?
It would take a lot more donuts from Myron and a lot more coffee from Keith for that one.
All right. Pressing forward to the future, we'll get the other topics at hand, or the other lawsuits and issues going on in just a second. But Sam Oleans, the Attorney General, I've got to ask you this. The decision comes down in June. Obviously, huge national repercussions. It'll be a big impact on the election. But let's talk about what happens if it's voted yes or voted no for the individual mandate. Once it gets to that point, if it's voted yes or voted no, is there a legislative remedy one way or the other for the losing party?
Well, look, that's why elections matter. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we need to take control of the Senate. We need to have a new president. There's no question that we do need changes to our healthcare system, irrespective of this lawsuit. I mean, we need to have portability where the insurance policy goes with the individual. We need to be able to buy policies from out of state where there's appropriate precautions. We need to take care of those folks that have pre-existing condition policies. We need to make sure that small businesses and the like have the ability to get a reasonable rate plan. You know, right now there's, no options out there, and it's frankly not fair for many small business folks, many people that own their own businesses to have access to insurance. If the Supreme Court were to rule against us, then candidly we better hope we take the Senate and the President, or else this thing will be way down the street. And we can just look for higher deficits and in our country looking like a second-rate European socialist society. If we win, then we've got the absolute opportunity to really turn the insurance system around and to make it user-friendly for our citizens, and to once again get that deficit under control and bring back American exceptionalism.
Now, that is it's the biggest case, or again, from the outside looking in, one of the most biggest and important cases you got. But I know there's a whole bunch of other stuff on your plate for Sam Oleans, Attorney General's office, calling us this morning on the Morning Drive. Sam, let me go ahead and ask you, what are some of the other things on the legislative agenda, or some of the other things that you're keeping an eye out for the first part of this year?
Well, from the litigation perspective, there's two huge cases. One is the immigration. March 1 is the oral argument in the 11th Circuit on House Bill 87. The court upheld 21 of 23 sections. We've got two sections that we're trying to find constitutional in that court, just about another month and a half. We also have three lawsuits regarding the EPA. One of them is the cross-state air quality rule, which is a huge issue for our state. The EPA turned down our state's implementation plan, which relates to how we handle air quality. We got good news last week where the court in D.C. granted the opportunity for briefs to question whether that rule is appropriate. Everyone wants cleaner air, but you need to do it in a way in which it's doable. It needs to be based on science, not politics. With regard to legislation, we're working on our Sunshine Laws bill for better government. We're looking to have a bill filed with regard to pill mills. Florida made some significant improvement last year. We've got more of those pill mills now trying to operate in our state, and we need to get rid of them. These aren't real doctors. These are hacks that are selling illegal drugs out of a storefront. So we're working a lot on that, and we're busy, and that's the way the AG's office is supposed to be.
Let me back up very quickly, talk about sunshine laws. One of my pet peeves with all politicians, these are the representatives and senators, they always say they're going to go in there, they're going to clean up, and we're going to have ethics. And I can't think of a campaign ad, a positive self-promoting campaign ad for any candidate where ethics and responsibility are not somewhere mentioned. Can you sort of take me through the sunshine laws and the ethics? Because are we finally getting serious and cracking down on some of the shenanigans going on throughout the Peach State?
Okay, now this frankly relates to open records and open meetings, and what it does is it puts the law in English so that everyone can understand it. It increases the fines, so folks that do the wrong things actually, get a sanction. It gives me more flexibility in the type of sanctions. It specifically lays out in a much better fashion what government can and can't do. For instance, one of the things it does, which is just a little thing, but it's one that will be appreciated by the citizens, it reduces the cost of the photocopies from 25 cents, which is current law, to a dime. We no longer pay that much for a copy. But the law still's back in the 1960s, and when the public is requesting documents from their government, they shouldn't, need to use their credit card to be able to pay for it. So one of the things is to make it cheaper. Another is to, frankly, make the process easier. With regard to open meetings, I think there are way too many decisions that are handled in the back room rather than in the public meeting. And we have this naive concept that the votes ought to occur at the public meeting. So we're putting in place a whole set of new sections that specifically say there will be no such thing as a vote other than a vote in public.
All right, I'm liking this idea. Also, I've got to ask you very quickly as a follow-up, and I assume this issue is dead, but let's talk about redistricting, voter ID, and all the other stuff. We have an election coming up. We've shifted all of our representatives. I think everybody's happy by now. Are we done with being able to say we have redistricted, and are we done with knowing that we have to take a valid photo ID to the polls when we go up this November?
We're done with voter ID. We won that in both state court and federal court. With regard to the Voting Rights Act, for the first time since the Voting Rights Act was passed in 1965, Justice pre-cleared our maps, State House, State Senate, and Congressional. Literally the first time that's happened. So we're really pleased with that and really proud of the process. Both the legislators, our office, and outside counsel did an excellent job. The Georgia Legislative Black Caucus is openly threatening what's called a Section 2 lawsuit. I expect any day that lawsuit will be filed. We will defend that vigorously, just as we claim in D.C. The current lines will still be applicable. You'd have to have a Georgia judge to stop that election. With those lines, that generally happens under the Section 5 rather than the Section 2 claim. Mm-hmm. So I think you can say that everyone knows those lines now, that they expect to run with those lines now, but I'm still going to have more litigation.
Final thing I've got to ask is, it just sort of an offhand question. By the way, if you're just tuned in right now, Sam Oleans, the Attorney General of the State of Georgia, I'm on the horn from Atlanta. Quick question here. I've got to ask you this. Are you being called a lot of bad names with what you do? Because I know attorneys in general, most people meet an attorney on the worst day of their life. It's not, hey, I'm going to go see my attorney, we're going to go have a great time. Usually there's a lawsuit or someone's being sued or something bad is happening. Do you ever get used to the personal attacks? And let me back up before I let you answer. I have seen, especially with, say, the health care legislation, the pundits on CNN and MSNBC saying, "Oh, these attorneys general, these 26 states, they're ill-informed, they're wrong, they're right-wing, they're Tea Party, they're evil, and they want healthcare costs to skyrocket and basically people to starve in the streets." Do you get that, or have you just gotten used to it so far?
Your skin never grows that thick. But I mean, let's be honest, Frank. I mean, MSNBC isn't something I ever watch. It's something I frankly make believe doesn't exist because I'm not a socialist. Mm-hmm. So, do I know that there are folks that disagree with me? Yes. But as the state's lawyer, my obligation isn't to my skin, it's to defending the law. And I think at the point that you pay more attention to, some of the, liberal press rather than you pay attention to the U.S. and Georgia Constitution, that's a problem. And for those folks who still think that 26 states are wrong, they've got to explain why the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in our favor. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if no courts ruled in our favor, the Supreme Court would never have taken the case up.
All right, and the timeline is coming up in March, and we expect the decision in June, just so people stay informed.
The end of June.
The end of June, perfect. Sam Oleans, I appreciate taking the time, and for those people who want to stay informed and in touch with everything, can you give me your website or URL address where people can look up and say, here's the case I'm concerned about, how do I find out what's really going on?
Yeah, absolutely. The website is law.ga.gov. Mm-hmm. And on the website, you can give us your email address, and then you'll get copies of all our press releases.
All right, perfect. We'll find it there.
I encourage folks to give us their email. It is not a political site. It's not my campaign site. That is the State of Georgia site, and they'll learn everything we're doing in the office through that site.
Sounds great. Sam Oleans, I appreciate it. Don't freeze up there in Atlanta, and we'll be in touch as this very, very busy season unfolds in front of us.
My pleasure. You have a great weekend.
Thank you. Take care. Sam Oleans, right there, Attorney General's State of Georgia.